Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Table Talks with Born to Rise. I thought I would start these little table talks to give us an opportunity to learn about individuals and their personal stories. I firmly believe that we each have a wild story we can tell, a mellow story we can tell, a personal story. It could be about one incident, it could be about a lifetime. But we all have stories to share, and when we share stories, we connect, we learn, and we create a little spark that gives someone some inspiration and helps them feel empowered in their own story. So my first guest, being that we're in quarantine and all that, is my son, Keydell. Hi, Keydell.
Hello, Kim. Thanks for inviting me.
He called me Kim. I love that. So professional. Um, so just a little backstory with you. Keydell is now 19 years old, but when I met him, he was 6. And I met him at a local group home in Middletown, Rhode Island that was run by Child and Family. And he was just the cutest little thing. I fell madly in love with him when I first saw him. And long story short, we ended up adopting Keydell at the age of 8. And I wrote a book about our first 2 years with Keydell coming into our home, and the book is called Finding. And so kindly, a lot of people wrote to me and said they really enjoyed the story. And they wanted me to write a second book so that I could follow up with where Keydell is now and learn more about him. So I thought I would interview him. So you up for that, Dell?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about when you first met me?
All right. So when I first met you, from what I remember, I don't remember being that young. I remember it being around 7 when I first met you. But it was when it was at the group home, and a bunch of people actually came as volunteers. And we did stuff like arts and crafts. We made food. We did like bake stuff. We just kind of hung out. It was kind of a way for us to be around people besides the group home staff and the other kids in the group home. So that was the first time I ended up meeting you. And then from there, you kept coming back. You guys would come back. I think it almost seemed like either once every 2 weeks or once a week at some point. I don't know. It got pretty frequent at one point. And every time you guys came, you guys had something else to do. And when I really met you, from my earliest memory, was when we were sitting on a couch together, and you started tickling me. And I remember I kicked you in the face by accident because you tickled me. That's the first story I remember from there. And we were just hanging out. I think we were hanging out in like a group session too. It was we were like telling stories or something like that. I don't remember the exact situation, but it was a group session in like the living room. And that's what I remember for when we met.
Do you remember seeing me and even thinking that I could possibly be your mother? Or kind of your second mother, of course, but taking you in. When did that thought even occur to you? Or did it ever?
It occurred to me when we were sitting on the couch, because I'm pretty sure I asked you if you were going to adopt me. But prior to that, prior to knowing that, you guys were coming there, I didn't really know. I actually remember thinking, because this is why I don't recall the beginning part, because my timeline is when I was there at the group home. I remember being there for like a year or two, or about a year or so, or a little over. I remember thinking, oh, I'm just going to be here for the rest of my life, because I was like used to it. I was kind of settled in, and I was doing well. And so I just assumed that I'd be there the rest of my life. And then when you came along, I was like, well, I thought, wow, this person could adopt me. That's pretty cool. And that's about when the ideas came there. So the ideas weren't there from the start, no.
So did you know that you were at any point did you know that you were up for adoption, or because you said you just assumed you'd always be there. So I'm assuming maybe you didn't know, but when did you know that you were going to be adopted?
I did not know. And it was in between that period of me saying, I would assume it was less than half a year or a couple months, where I was like, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, versus, oh, I'm up for adoption. And then when I realized you were around. So I would say that was a quick period. That was a small blip of the entire time I was at the group home, because I was at the group home for about a year and a half, a little bit over that. Because I got there when I was 6.5, because I was a little young actually for being there. And then all throughout 7, and then 8, and then I moved out January 31st, which was right. It was like 2 months after my 8th birthday.
Yeah. So tell me about your earliest memory. Not necessarily the group home even, but what's your earliest memory and who was it with, if anybody?
It'd be with my biological mom and my biological brother and biological sister. It was probably one of those mornings where I woke up early and either made cereal or watched TV, or biking down to the park near our house, or playing or going to get ice cream. One of those types of memories, where I was probably around 4, I'd say.
Yeah. That's a
And
pretty good early memory. Yeah.
yeah. I just remember them vividly.
And do you remember how you felt at that time?
I would say I felt fine. I felt happy. I felt normal. I guess I was just living my life. So at that age, I don't know if I really had major feelings at 4 years old, but I knew that I was doing what I wanted to do and did best, I guess. So, I remember sleeping, eating,
Yeah, normal
playing. I
stuff.
remember doing, normal stuff. And it from that perspective, from the perspective now, it seems very, sort of like almost as normal as it is as I feel now. So,
Yeah.
the feelings are pretty much the same, I would say.
When do you remember the first time being afraid or kind of scared about what was happening or your life or anything?
My first time being afraid, I would say, I don't remember it, but I would assume this is probably my first time being afraid. It was when I started
No,
living
no,
with
let's go with one that you remember. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, but if you can
one that
remember
I
ever being
remember.
afraid.
I would say probably when I first got dropped off at the group home, either that or when I first started kindergarten or pre-K. I mean, those are two big ones. Getting put in an area where you're not used to as a young kid. So I would say
Oh, I
those
just lost
two.
your sound. Something happened
Um,
with the sound.
hmm?
Oh, there you're back. I think the
um,
internet got weird.
I would say that the first time I felt afraid was definitely, when I went into the group home at such a young age. I don't even think it was because I was young. It's just the idea that I was getting put in a group home, and I didn't know for how long or for why I was going there or anything. I didn't know much about it. All I knew is that I got dropped off with like some of my stuff, and then more of my stuff kept coming. And yeah, that was definitely wild. Definitely a wild time.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. How did you feel, when you first came into our family?
um, some of the feelings are actually similar. A little bit scary because it was new again. I mean, new. It wasn't as like much fearful. It was more of excitement. Um, there's a lot of feelings. There was excitement, fear, precaution. I would say a little bit of. I thought about it strategically as I do everything, but it definitely was sort of an idea that it was temporary, as always. I often had that feeling. So it was like, let's think about this and how it's going, and take it in as it is, rather than projecting into the future or projecting into what may or may not be.
So you just assumed that it was temporary?
I didn't assume anything. So the
Oh, okay.
idea was that I can't assume it's long term, and I can't assume it's temporary either, because I don't know, and because everything was so uncertain in the past, it was just the same.
So when you said you were being cautious, what did you want to be cautious about?
I was cautious too as whether I would probably be moved again. That was probably the biggest one, because moving around so much, being precautious about my surroundings. More of the fact that because I've been moving around so much, but it's been moving around just me. Like everyone else stays, but I move. It's more of that's probably why where the individual aspects of it come, where I was just like, hey, as long as I can keep myself okay, we're good. So that's where the precautions come from, that, and as well as knowing that I might be moving soon, I guess.
Did you feel lonely? Did you feel like you were a kind of alone when you say, like, is that what I'm reading is that you kind of made sure to take care of yourself, but did you feel like you were just kind of this,
Hmm. I feel
like
like
almost like a
that's,
ping pong bouncing around between other groups, or what, did you feel any connection?
I feel like that idea of being alone is sort of, it's very different for everyone.
Mm.
And or like it's very, the idea of being alone is not like, because you can be surrounded by people and still be alone, but then again you could be surrounded by no one and not feel alone in an
Which one were
aspect.
you?
um I never, I being such a individual person I am, just from how I grew up, like I said, like making stuff in the morning for myself at the age of 3 or 4. um I was fine. I was fine being alone. But so I didn't. So for me, it's not lonely. It just is. I guess you could categorize it as lonely, but it's not the same negative effects that people might equate with loneliness. It was more of, um, I was doing me, and there were people around me. So I guess you would, if you had to put a label on it, it would be surrounded by people but still alone. Which
But
leads
not
into,
lonely,
but not lonely. No.
right?
I don't think I've ever been. I think I actually feel the most lonely when I am in a group, actually, to be honest, but not for the same reason that other people would be. It's, well, actually, maybe it is. Maybe it would be, it usually doesn't happen, but it's like I'm in a group and I don't fit into that group, or like I don't have the same views as that group. And it's not like I feel lonely, or just like, hey, I have nothing to necessarily offer to this group. So it's like, I'll just do me over here, I guess. That's I guess that's how it works.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So, yeah, no, that makes sense. I get that. So how did you feel those first 2 years? Because for those of you who have not read Finding, for me personally, and I try to really emphasize that this story is my story, which is part of the reason I want to interview Keydell here, to let him tell his story. It was very challenging, and we were confused. He was confused, I assumed, not knowing really who these people were that were taking him in, and all of a sudden they're supposed to be mom and dad and brother and sister. But it was very hard for us because we could feel his unsettledness, which often manifested in heavy duty outbursts, and sometimes were very violent, and it was hard to know what to do to help him feel secure. So, Keydell, I want to ask you this question. When there was that first 2 years, how did you manage? How did you find a way to feel okay with whatever was happening? Or did you even think about it like that? How did you feel those first 2 years?
I'd say it's the same way I think of things as being okay now. I mean that idea is certainly solidified now, and it's much better. But I I don't like worrying about things as I would when I was younger, and I found out worrying literally accomplishes nothing besides make it less enjoyable to be alive. So I sort of say, I mean, almost as a factor of, it is how it is, and if I want something to change, or I don't like how it is, I'll aim to change it myself, or ask for help to change something, or some example, or some form of that. I mean, and so in those situations, when I was younger, I definitely would try and do that. I would try and say, this is what I'm in, and this is how it is. And if I'm, but wasn't as definitely as I wasn't as confident within that ideology yet. And so now I definitely am pretty confident with that. But back then it was still the same thought process, but it just wasn't as profound.
And when you would have an upset, what was your state of mind? Like, why do you think, I don't even know how to phrase this question, because you were so young and so just trying to find your way, that when we were confused, were you able to tell that? Or what did you think we were thinking about when?
Oh, I could tell you guys were confused, I would say, especially just from when someone's confused, they either do a couple of things. They either, one, don't do anything, or two, they try everything, right? And you guys are definitely the type of people to try everything. So once I'd see that you guys were trying a different style of XYZ, I was like, well, don't have the answer because they're trying everything. And I'd see a drastic change in how you'd handle certain situations that are practically the same. And so I would see, oh, I'm getting in trouble again. Oh, they're not handling it this way. This time it's going to be this way. And so.
So when do you feel like you really, like, you know, you talked about how you thought it was temporary. When do you feel like you really realized that it was not temporary? Because there were some times in the beginning there where it was so challenging and I felt like you didn't want to be with us and you were trying to make that happen by acting out. And oops, sorry, that I'm just curious to when that changed for you. When do you feel like you felt like it was going to be okay to stay in this family and it was really going to happen?
I would say, when did it change? I would say when you guys didn't give up. That would be the answer. But I can't pinpoint like a certain scenario or a certain time when that happens.
Yeah. I know you mentioned to me one
like,
time that the court date when the judge actually said it was official, you felt confident that you were staying.
Yeah, that was a little situation right there. But that was only a couple months after I moved in, so it wasn't like that was that wasn't the end of all the mishaps. So
no, that was actually, honestly, it was almost a year in, believe it or not.
I moved in January 31st and was adopted August 22nd.
Yeah, so it was, 8 months? Almost, not quite a year, but 8 months or so. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 months.
What
No, like 7 months actually, because
7 months was the end of August. Yeah,
end of January.
Right. It seemed like a long time. I don't know why. It seemed like it was taking forever to make it official because we knew we were going to adopt you, but they had that whole foster period that you have to go through and and everything. But you're a very, very resilient young man. Like you're very self-sufficient. You're very resilient. You're a very, go-getter type of guy. What do you think helped form that in you, or do you think you just came out that way?
What formed that in me is
what motivates you to be that type of person, I guess.
Oh, I was thinking about this the other night, to be honest. And I was thinking about it earlier. I was thinking about it at some point, but it's definitely the idea of accomplishing certain tasks and seeing results that they were accomplished. And then once you do enough of those things, they add up to each other, and you think, oh, well, if I can do that, and now I can do that, and then I can do that, and you just get slightly and slightly harder, and then you start thinking, oh, wow, I keep getting through these things. And obviously none of it's done alone. Just like human civilization has been over time, it's built off of other successes, which allow us to get further and further. But after doing all of that, you get to the point where you realize you can get through a lot. And so I guess I would say that my resilience comes from past efforts and past successes.
That's great. What do you think your biggest success is?
I'd say, okay, so my biggest success that is a perfect correlation to what I just said would definitely be soccer. The fact that I just literally practiced every day and got better at it and became one of the best kids in Middletown, I would say, and ended up playing in college and stuff like that. I would say that it just shows you put an effort into something, you'll get better at it. I'd say another one would be definitely my behavior over time, and how I react to certain things. That was definitely a good one. That one, I would say, took a lot of other people's help, whether it was therapists or like neurofeedback or anything like that. But that was also an example of putting effort into something and getting a change out of it. So you have
a really strong mindset, right? You're the type of person who I think you set your mind to something and you can really decide to make things happen, and you put the work in, which is admirable because a lot of people don't necessarily have that skill. But I think part of it is that you don't have a lot of fear. It seemed
Well,
like,
well,
even when I asked you some things that were scary, it was mostly just change, which is scary for a lot of people, is change. But like, I've heard you get on a sales call, and we'll talk more about your businesses in a minute, but I've heard you get on a sales call time and time and time again, and you don't seem to have the fear of hearing a no or doing it wrong, or you just kind of keep going. Does that resonate with you?
yeah. So the idea is, I mean, yes, I have fear, but because of all the past, I realized that unless you die, you're gonna be okay. So, um, I mean, what stops people from doing things is fear, right? But I mean, when you hit a lot of people, when you hear about people moving on, doing great things, or like coming from nothing to something, is they hear about these. You hear about people hitting rock bottom or something tragic happens and they make it through it. It's because once you get through all that hard stuff and you realize that you're alive still, or you realize that you're still going, it's like, well, having a no from someone isn't gonna kill me, so I guess I could get through that now. Like you just right before you go to do something, you look at it as if like it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, and you're gonna be fine. And so then you're fine. And the fact that I'm not attached to things or anything in life, feelings, not really, which is kind of sad, but like stuff like that, it's like you can almost get everything back that you lose at some point. So it's like, even then, I'm not afraid of losing things. Not afraid of losing. I would say merit is up there. I'm afraid of losing that, but then again, you can always earn that back. So everything can just be, with time, everything changes. So there's no reason to be afraid. I still am afraid, but it's not like it's stopping me.
Yeah, that's
More of
beautifully
just a
said.
factor.
That's beautifully said. Um, tell us about your businesses. What have you got going on with your businesses?
Um, Currently, I own a 3D printing business. I run a 3D printing company that professionalizes in 3D printing models of working on architectural work and boat work. So like sailboats, motorboats, yacht models, things like that. And then for architectural, it's mostly homes. And then we also do replacement parts as well. And then in terms of my sales, I sell Cutco cutlery, which is a set of high-end cutlery. It's mostly cutlery, but we also do pots, pans, other kitchen equipment, pretty much anything you can find in your kitchen besides the shelves and the chairs and the table. But everything else, we have. Oh, and the refrigerator. But I do that as well. I always like to have myself like to be involved in something forward moving, which is kind of a new thing. Whether it's turning into tech startups, where I have now my second internship in a tech company. And then I also love to trade stocks. I've been doing that for a while. So been doing that for about 2 years. So
And during this quarantine period, you've done quite well, I have to say.
I did
I might
pretty
have
well
to
today
hire
too. I did pretty well today. Yeah. I like doing it. I think uh, I definitely wasn't good at it at the start. I would say I thought I was good, but I wasn't. And a lot of what trading is it's mostly a mindset. I mean, it's like 10%, maybe 5% skill, and a lot of it's just being able to overcome your own emotions when you're
you.
losing and
Yeah,
making money.
yeah. So describe what it was like to get a new brother and sister, and what your relationship is with Henry and Ella.
um, Getting new siblings was definitely different because it was. I mean, not a. It's getting new siblings when they're biologically related to you. You kind of have an idea that they're going to be sort of similar to you. But when moving into this family, I got new siblings that are basically almost like random people. Like they were like friends you'd meet at school or something like that. And so that was different for sure for me. That idea of them not really being like related to me. So they're almost just like other people in the world to me. And so that was my outlook on them. And it was more like they're other people. Well, they are living in my house, but yet then again, it's like I have no actual relation to them. So they're just there. And more of the idea of them was they either would be peers or they'd just be acquaintances. You know what I mean? They would be people that like because that you see in your class that you know but don't really hang out with, or they'd be people in your class that you end up becoming really good friends with.
Yeah, and I would assume being in a group home, you've been used to kind of having almost like other siblings around. So here you were with the whole other bunch of people that you didn't know.
Exactly.
And how about
Yeah.
now?
Now, yeah, I'd say now that they are my siblings. Um, they definitely, they definitely are. I view them as siblings. I definitely view them as my brother and my sister. And I would say more recently, I've become more connected with them in the brother-sibling relationship type way. Like you hear about things like, oh, that's a brother-sister type thing, or that's a brother-brother type thing. Like you hear about things like that, and I never really understood those things. I mean, I did, but didn't at the same time. And so now I would say that I do experience something closer to that than I did at all in the beginning.
Yeah. Tell us something about you that you want people to know about you. What do you want people to know about you that maybe we don't know or you don't think they know or
Um, I would say one thing that people should know about me, whether you'll find it out when you instantly meet me or end up getting to know me. It kind of depends on who you are, which is interesting as a person. But I am very, I would say, in terms of society and life, I am an outlier in many things, which makes me not like many of the norms in the world, whether it be work ethics or social ethics or anything, any type of ethics. Um, I definitely am not the same, but I know what the idea is. And so my mind is definitely very strategic and like math side of it. I would say just think of it as math, and everything math is I always think about things logically and strategically. And so um, one thing you should know about me is I would say that's the way I think. And so every situation comes down to that, no matter what it is.
okay. So what are your dreams? What kind of dreams do you have for yourself?
Dreams. Dreams as in, can you elaborate a little more?
So where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
10 years from now.
Something like that.
Um, so 10 years from now, so this is how I go about thinking that. Some people, I would say 10 years from now, I'm going to be 29. So,
Just the facts,
exactly.
ma'am.
Yeah, so I'm going to be 29. I would have graduated, I'd be 6 years graduated, right? Yeah, well, about six, or maybe 6 or 7. So I'd hope to be living on my own and have started a family. Not entirely into a family, but at least found someone that I want to spend the rest of my life with. But I would want to be stable in terms of me as a person, like very, very stable with myself as a person, whether it is emotionally, spiritually, financially, everything like that. I would want to be very close to that, and have someone else who could help me with that. And by doing that, I would hope that I can then go on to start a family and focus all my efforts on starting a family and helping out other people in the world. So 29 years from now, if we want to put that into technical terms, I will hopefully be very high up or either running my own company still. I definitely want to do that. I hope to have multiple streams of income, sort of like whether it is one for a couple of reasons. One, because it's how you find yourself in financial support, because then it balances out the way. If one goes low, you're good with the other one. But also if I have that, I feel like I can educate other people as well in each one of the areas. That would be pretty cool. I would like to um, be free to move around and travel. That's definitely one other thing I would like to do. And I'd like to then after that, I would say that's probably around the time I'd probably want to start a family and have kids and live like the movies.
Live like the movies. So I say in the book that you were my greatest spiritual teacher. Do you understand what I mean when I say that?
You've explained it to me a couple times.
Well, without even thinking about maybe what I said, what do you think it means to have a spiritual teacher?
Someone who who is able to, someone or something who is able to teach you how to better understand the idea of beings and how they present with themselves and with each other's in life.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a spiritual teaper?
Ironically, you're my spiritual teacher. Definitely.
Ironically.
I would say out of everyone in my life, you have pretty high connection with that area. And so whether it is your meditation or if it's your books or your work that you do, I would say I get most of my spiritual teachings from you.
Well, thank you. What was it like to have a book written about you, and was there anything that came out of that was good or bad for you?
Having a book written about me was definitely pretty unique. I think the craziest part is how popular the book got in our small town, so that just about everyone knew about it. I think the coolest thing was one of my crushes read the book and gave a book report on it, and I was like, that's cool.
One of your classmates?
Yeah. She told me about it like as she was doing it, and I was like, no way. Maybe I should come in as a guest speaker. And I didn't end up doing that, but that would have been pretty cool. She said she got a good grade on it, so that was cool. So that was, I'd say the ideology of people being able to read it and hear about it was pretty cool. There's not many people that could say, if you want to learn about me, read this book. Or if you've read this book, you know a little bit more about me, and so you don't have that excuse of saying you don't know me. Well, you read an entire book about me, so I could say you pretty much know me.
Do you think the book is about you? Or do you think it's about, what do you think it's about? Because I know you didn't read it. You didn't really want to read it, and I understand that. But what do you think the book is about?
I feel like now, I'm thinking of this idea now, that it's actually about you growing from me, but then a lot about my actions and lessons. Like me in it is just the lessons and actions that I've done, but it's more about you growing as a person in terms of spiritually. And that's why I'm the spiritual teacher, because it's just what I do, but it's the underlying aspect is you growing as a person.
And what do you think gave me those lessons? What kind of behaviors that you had or whatever were lessons for me? Like, can you put that into context for
Like
people?
me acting out, I would say would be one of them. Is that what you're aiming for?
Well, I'm not aiming. I guess I'm just saying, like, if we were going to talk about how relationships work and how people are teachers for other people, I guess I could just comment that what essentially for me, you were my spiritual teacher because I hadn't met anyone like you before who challenged me in such a way. There were a lot of really beautiful things that came out of our challenging relationship, if you will. And it was only challenging not because you were directing specifically anything towards me, but just that you were such a role model to me in a way of being authentic. Not that you were necessarily choosing that, you were just having these upsets,
Right.
but there was something very real and raw about your behaviors, even though they were really hard to take at times. And even now, you and I might get into a little kind of disagreement every now and then, but I always know where I stand with you, and I always appreciate you being you. And I don't know if you understand how valuable that can be in a relationship. Even though somebody might get rubbed a certain way or whatever, your honesty and your authenticity is very clear. And I, in particular, really always know where I stand with you. And that has a lot of value for me.
I'd say a lot of people know that from me. And that's just because of the way I am and how it's just like, being, I would say back to the lonely thing. You could almost say that I'm always lonely. I don't feel sad and lonely, but I'm always lonely because I don't change. A lot of people change who they are based on who they're talking to, where they are, what environment they're in, blah, 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 blah. I find no need to do that because it just takes extra energy. So I always aim to just be me, wherever me is, whatever me is at that time in that area should be generally the same throughout everything. And so that's what it makes me so blunt and straightforward with people. And most people change because they have that fear, right? Of saying, I need to be this in front of these people so these people like me, but I'm in front of XYZ other people, I need to be this so they like me too. But again, if they don't like me and I don't die from it, I'm going to be fine.
So just to nudge you a little bit, when you first took off for school, obviously that was another big change. Whole new bunch of people, nobody knows you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you had a desire to be a little different than you normally are to fit in? And what happened with that?
That was interesting. My first semester at college was definitely very interesting. So I had this ideology of what college was going to be, and I was ready to go. And I guess I could say I hoped it would be what I thought it would be.
Which is
and
what?
that is the idea movie, like a college movie. Like you go to school, you're like the classes are pretty cool. You meet cool people. You go to parties. You hang out. I play in the soccer team, so have my group of boys that I hang out with. I do random things in the middle of the day, like play ultimate frisbee or walk through the quad and chill, like random things like that. And that's what I thought about it. And I was like, having the cafeteria be at your disposal, going to the library and like hang out with your friends, or like that
meeting
girl
girls.
that you like. Yeah, exactly. Or like that girl that you like. And I thought it was gonna be that. And it was when I made it that, but that wasn't what I wanted. That was almost me doing what I don't like to do, which is conforming to other societal type ideologies. And so it ended up being really tough for me because I was doing all of those things and that wasn't what I like to do. And so, it's not what I don't like to do. I mean, that's all cool stuff. I mean, I like a lot of things, so it's really tough for me to say that. But it wasn't on point. And so I definitely would say I struggled first semester because I was doing that. And second semester I came in and I was like, yeah, no, that ain't me. So I just started doing me. And that is me on a Friday night. My average Friday night goes, I usually get off of school on a Friday or a Thursday night. Our Thursdays at BAPS and our Fridays. I get out of school or classes at like 1 or 11:30, depending on my schedule. And I usually take a nap. Naps are essential. I hate sleeping, but I always take naps. Really doesn't add up, but I need my sleep, I guess. But then I'd wake up, do some homework, and then I would eat and soccer and stuff like that, all those normal stuff. But then while most kids would go out, I would work a lot because I love to get stuff done. I find accomplishing work tasks helps me out a lot. And then I would chill in my dorm and like play video games, listen to music, or work more, or just chill. And I found out where I would go and play soccer or something like that, or do something low key. I would do what I wanted to do and not with what I thought I should be doing because I was at college.
So what I'm hearing is that the partying and the frisbee all on the lawn and just play, girls everywhere was not fitting into who you are. Is that right? So that was not necessarily once you started doing those things to kind of fit into that college ideal lifestyle, you realized it wasn't really for you. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, but I actually think that I could be me, but it'd be a different me if I had two lives to live. Because when you do those things, you obviously, there's only 24 hours in a day, you can't do everything. And so that was a whole different style of living, and it was over here. And what I wanted to do was over here. And so
it's where you're placing your value and your time and all that, right?
Exactly. And I was having some fun, but I was more disappointed at myself after it. And so that's when the struggles came, was I would do that and I would think, oh crap, I didn't get to do anything else or all the other things that I wanted to do, and I'd be disappointed in myself.
Yeah. So what do you think what was the turning point? Where was the aha where you're like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore? Or I'm not going to put my value over there. I'm going to shift back to here. Was there a pivotal moment?
It was Christmas break, I would say, which was the end of the semester. I still think that I had started it before the end of the semester, but I wasn't fully back to my normal self. And so the end of the semester, I was still, no, yeah, I definitely still wasn't my normal self, but I was going into it. And then when I came back, I took my break off, and I was really productive over break. And then I came back and got back into the things. I would say, no, Thanksgiving break is when I started to become myself, and then I wasn't fully myself till the end. And then when I came back for second semester, was really when I just started doing me, I would say.
Yeah. So the last thing I'm just going to ask you is, I want to hear a little personal story, maybe something that happened in your life or your day, and just kind of tell us a little story about a certain incident or a interaction or a moment that you want to share with us. Kind of just a little short story.
Like a recent one, or just any story?
It can be from any time, like just a memory. Like I could prompt you with something like the word success.
Okay. Short story about success. So I would say, when I have been blessed to have a lot of success in my life, I would say, but success is all relative. So my success is definitely not someone else's success. But success in that definition for me is when you've accomplished something that you've been working towards, or when you've done something that you don't normally do, or stepping outside the box. And from doing that over and over again, success is really when you start putting in the action of doing something, not the result for me.
Can you give us a small example?
Yeah, so that's what I'm going into.
Okay, sorry.
So that for me is when I really start hitting my feelings and passion towards a situation. And this was when I first got my first 3D printer. It was given to me by my mentor. Shout out Tucker Holmes. But it wasn't the best printer. Granted, it was free, so couldn't really argue with that. But I knew I wanted to do something with a business, and when I got 3D printer, I was like, oh, I could do something with a 3D printing business. And the first night I got it, I printed something, and I stayed up like all night to print something, and then I got more, and I got more prints, and eventually it broke. And I put in a lot of effort. Like there were nights where I'd be up to like 2 a.m. or like I'd go to sleep and set my alarm at 3:30 just so I could go out to the back barn and make sure the print came out good, or make sure it was going well, because for 3D printing, it's all about time. I mean, it takes like 4 hours to print something. And if you wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. and realize the print stopped at 2 a.m., now you have to go to school and not have that product to give someone. So that was that. But I really found out the success was when I was putting in that effort to fix it, or putting in that time to make sure that everything was going right, or putting in that time to wake up and check on it. And that is where the success is. It's not where in the end, now that I have a 3D printing business that allows me to employ, I've always had 2 to 5 people within the business, or if it's that generates revenue, that's not the success for me. The success for me was coming from the work put in. And that is the hardest part. I mean, everyone says, like, it's easy to say you did something and got here. It's easy to say you're going to do something and get there. You're going to go to the gym and lose a ton of weight. You went to the gym and lost a ton of weight. But the hard part is everything in the middle. And that's what it comes down to. And a lot of that is just the fear, the social aspects, and mostly fear, but that people don't want to have happen. And so they don't put in that middle area. I mean, it's really easy to say, I'm going to set these New Year's resolutions. It's really easy to say, oh, I did that, but it's not easy to actually put in that little middle part and do it.
Yeah, very insightful. I agree.
So when you are doing things, realize that you're doing things and take the gratefulness of actually putting in the effort. When you're in the middle of writing that essay, or and you're in the middle of mowing the lawn, or when you're in the middle of doing anything, realize that you're actually doing it, and that is the best part of doing it.
And what advice would you give to a family who is considering adopting, or to, you can choose either one, but, or to a child who is going to be adopted?
If you're going to be adopted, I would say my what's now becoming my motto, because it keeps coming up, which is, if it doesn't kill you, you're going to be okay. And so the adoption thing is, it's going to be okay, and you'll get through it, and just work towards it. I'd say that. And then,
How do you think you could help parents who are adopting,
yeah,
who may have a child who has upsets and things like that?
and then
What should we understand about that?
understand that it may seem kind of obvious from this point of view, or it's obvious to me, but they're not trying to be like that. They don't want to be like that. Their main goal in life is not to make you upset or annoy you or make everyone else's life terrible.
What are they feeling?
What are they feeling?
Like in those upsets, if you weren't
They
trying
don't know.
to,
And the
bother
world
us and
doesn't
push us
know.
away. Sorry. What?
It's a why is the sky blue question. Usually it's different for everyone. Well, the why is the sky blue actually has an answer, but it's like the idea of asking that question. It's like it's so out there that, I mean, you ask them what are they feeling, and that's the truth. They probably won't know, depending on how
Yeah.
old they are. It probably isn't even that. That's probably not even the reason behind it. There might be some feelings behind it, but it's most likely it's not the idea of what you're thinking the feelings might be. And so to take into the fact that they're acting out and you want to try and pinpoint their feelings, I would say that is not always the best way to go about it. But then again, still, I would say you could possibly keep them in mind, but it's really hard to figure out those feelings. So going about it that way is just harder.
Well, one thing I learned moving forward was that I couldn't assume anything, and that I basically needed to just love you and accept you for who you were in all of it, even if it was not maybe in that time an ideal situation or what I thought it should look like, or that you were going to be happy, because you had this great life now or something like that, but to simply give you the space to figure out your own life, and that was enough. That was enough of me to give. It didn't have to be that I had all the answers or made your life a certain way or not. It was really just making the space for your life to unfold on its own.
Exactly. I think you really touched on it there. It's just being there, and knowing that things will change, but being there for them is probably the biggest point.
Well, thank you, Keydell. I hope you all got a little insight to this remarkable young man.
Me too.
Keydell is a freshman and just finishing his freshman year at Babson College. He is on the soccer team. He's getting great grades and making awesome friends from the soccer team and otherwise. And, we're now home together, and he is working his businesses. He's been trading stocks. He's doing all the same things. He's a remarkably smart, ambitious young man. And that, I saw a lot of that in him when he was very young, but it's really interesting to see some of the fears that he may have had or the insecurities falling away, so that he could shine in all those things that he already had in him that just needed a little nurturing. So thank you, Keydell, for
having me.
Adopting you. And you're a crazy cool young guy, and I'm glad you're home.
Awesome. Thank you. And if you guys have any more questions, you can follow me on Instagram at KeydellF25. You can message me on there, or you can reach out to me via my email at KeydellFuller
Spell Keydell.
at iCloud.com. That is Keydell, KEYDELL.
Yeah. Well, Keydell, love you very much, honey. Thank you for being my first interview story sharer with Born to Rise Table Talks. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.